this country is built on credit. I mean, if you think about what this country is constantly talking about, the national
$1 trillion deficit.
Come on, exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
a country that operates and functions off of credit is going to have a bloodline economic system that also functions the same way. And
Mm-hmm.
they abuse it pretty radically themselves at the top level. And it's no wonder that the citizens do the same. So it's like the same leeching concept, as the sins of the father passed down to the sons, as the Bible says. So it's an unfortunate kind of reciprocal situation as to the way that happens. But that's the biggest misconception, is that people will come and their credit, and it, especially first time home buyers, as you were asking, Jason, it's that they don't know. That's it. It's not.
D-Town, LA, NO, Florida, Mississippi, KC, MO, Show them what you stand for. Show them what you stand for. Show them what you stand for. Chi-Town, Tennessee, Carolinas, Alabama, Oakland, St. Louis, Detroit, Atlanta. Show them what you stand for.
Peace and blessings, everybody. Welcome to the Kings Can Move On podcast. You have your co-host here, Frank the Tank, aka Big Reno, in the house. What's happening?
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Lil J, aka. What's my aka? Dang it.
Wood up to no good.
Wood. Been so long since I said all that. Yeah, I forgot my aka. But anyway, what's up with KCMO on the podcast in the house?
Yes, sir.
Let me say this real quick. If you are listening on YouTube or any of the other platforms, please subscribe, like and follow. We need to get those numbers up so we can keep doing this for y'all. But at any rate, Frank Tank, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing highly favored. How you doing?
That's what you're doing? Highly favored?
Less than highly favored. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm doing better than I deserve. How about that? Better than I deserve.
Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Won't he do it?
Hey, I'm not gonna play with you on that. But anyhow, I'm excited about tonight because we have a guest. We actually have a guest that decided to come on and show up. We've had some scheduling challenges as of late with some people missing out, but we have a guest tonight. We actually have a great guest who has information I think will be very valuable to our listeners. We have a mutual friend with Mr. Carl Cambridge, aka Hen, our third partner in this business, and we're going to talk about money, mortgages, and just general entrepreneurship right now with Mr. Mark Macinerney. Is that right?
Nailed it. You got
What's up, brother?
What's going on, gentlemen? Thanks again for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
About to take me some notes because when you said mortgage broker, I do wholesale on the side as well. So you may be able to give me some insight on that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But now, like I said, Mark, thank you for coming on. Thank you for committing to coming on and then actually taking time of your busy schedule to come on.
Sir.
We really appreciate that. We really do.
Yeah.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I mentioned, we have a mutual friend, Mr. Carl Cambridge. How do you guys know each other, first of all?
Well, you wouldn't guess, just as we were talking before we kind of came on, with what Macinerney is and, some of the bloodline that I contain. But in a previous life, I used to be a rapper, and I don't mean like rapping Christmas gifts. I'm talking about like hip hop artist, rapper.
You used to spit it?
Like Macklemore? Macinerney, Macklemore?
I mean, if there's any correlation, when Eminem was coming out, well, Mark Macinerney, Marshall Mathers, we also shared the same, initials in our name once.
Right. What'd you call yourself?
Marco Mac.
Marco Mac. Okay. Nice.
How long did that go, Mark?
So, the story started really, I went to a high school that was largely minority based, where actually I was considered more of a minority, if you will, by, the general population. And from 9th grade to 12th grade, I won every rap talent show that we had. And I was always, kind of an 80s kid. I was born in 1976. So I feel like I was right there on the fringe where hip hop was what we know hip hop to be today. Actually, some of the shit that's out there today, I'm not particularly sure I can kind of get down with, but what was really the wave that brought hip hop, you know, to the forefront the way that it currently exists now. It's pretty commercial and got some other flair to it. But so I was really infused in that. I was really infused in rap. I was probably amongst many other white kids that thought they wanted to be rappers because they, you know, shot basketball and, you know, had some homeboys and did all that other kind of stuff. So I just happened to be one of those, and had some very low level success that prompted, you know, continued efforts in doing so. Started a record label with a high school buddy of mine, and he believed in me, as well as a circle of friends that thought that maybe I could do something, you know, with the rhyme skill that I had, and also the performance kind of presentation that we did. I felt like we put on some really, really good shows. And along that process, actually it was my partner. His name was William, or Pookie as we called him. Pookie had found Caro.
Not Pookie. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You
Pook,
had a
Big Pook.
homeboy named Pookie
I had a Pookie
Big
Low.
Pook.
did business with?
Yeah. No, Pookie was a smart cat, man. He was a real smart cat. He was
Okay.
probably what I would have considered like my best friend in high school. So there was a couple of us that were a little crew, called ourselves the Royal Players back then. But anyway, Pookie had found, and I'm not exactly sure, to tell you the truth, like what was the exact like logistical connection, but Caro was in a group at that time called Urban Soul. And as much as they were also kind of a group, they also were producers, you know. And I think just kind of, you know, my boy Pookie kind of having his hand on the pulse on, you know, just what was that underground connection. There was a budding hip hop scene here in Houston. I mean, Houston took a very long time to get its commercial recognition, but Houston was crushing it down here for a long time, you know, without getting mainstream. I still think one of the best rappers ever to exist, Scarface, still does.
Say it again. Say it again. Say it again.
Scarface
I
is our
started
J-
small time, dope game, cocaine, pushing rocks on the block. I'm never broke, but say it again, man.
See, I told you, game recognized game. I'm telling you what's up here. But anyway, somehow or another, my boy Pookie ran into Urban Soul, I'll say, and then we started collaborating with them. And I was working on a solo project, as let's say the stage name being Marco Mac, but this album was called Don Juan DeMarco. I was kind of angling most of the music to be a bit like a ladies' man.
Okay.
LL Cool J, you know, kind of, you know, fused with a white Hispanic guy, right? Which is, you know, my heritage and my genetic makeup. And Urban Soul not only co-produced and full out produced some tracks, but they also cameoed on a couple of songs that we had. And then as we started to work together, quite frankly, personally, me and Caro got pretty close. Like I remember I was very visionary in terms of being creative in the way that I wanted to take this music that we were doing. To tell you the truth, I wanted to rap, but my idol was Sean Puffy Combs. Like I wanted to be him. I didn't want to be big.
Mastermind.
Yeah, I didn't want to be Biggie, but I liked the idea, especially again during that time. That's kind of now shifted more towards the 90s. I mean, Puff Daddy was able to also showcase himself inside of, you know, the visual presentation, right? Like he was all take that, you know, we all knew who Puff Daddy was. So I used to spend a lot of time, you know, in the little pickup jobs that I'd have. Me and Caro be on the phone, and, you know, I'd be talking about, man, I got this flyer design, and, you know, I got us booked over here at this studio, and we just get all hyped up, just excited, you know, just talking about music. And man, once we sell 10,000 records, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. So
yeah, that's dope. That's dope. That's dope. And you know what, Mark? I was looking at your pages, you know, on Facebook and whatnot.
Yeah.
And before you came on with the beard and all that, I was gonna say you remind me. Has anybody ever said you look like Tommy from Power?
From who? From where?
Power.
Tommy from Power. Goes homeboy. You do look like him, man.
Oh, I know old Tommy. That's funny. When I used to watch Power, that was and especially, you know, with keeping it, you know, kind of high and tight.
Keeping it tight.
Yeah.
You had no
Yeah.
facial hair, you might be able to pass for old crazy ass Tommy. But
Man,
yeah,
you may be a stunt double. You can be a stunt double. Shit.
Doppelganger, maybe. Yeah, no doubt. That's funny.
but
Well, then Pookie would have been Ghost.
you mean Ghost? Yeah, there
That
you
would
go.
Mhm.
have been Pookie.
There you go. That was your ace right there. See, that's right.
Mhm.
Then you transitioned all that, and so now you're in the mortgage business,
Right.
and you're a broker, and you have your own brokerage. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I've been doing that now for 16, 17 years. Yeah. So that's kind of what became when music didn't hit.
Yeah.
And we gave it a try. Like we really put in a tremendous amount of money and effort, all the blood, sweat, and tears. And when that didn't hit, actually, again, Pookie or William, his real name, he actually
No, man, we going by poop. We going by street names over here. Poop. What up,
he
poop?
he he had the foresight at that time to get into flipping houses, and this is way before flipping houses is what it is today, which again is incredibly commercial. So this would almost been considering it like an underground kind of trade. And the lending guidelines were quite loose back then, where it didn't really require a whole lot to qualify for mortgages. And well, he was smart and racked up some homes. And I've traversed a lot of different careers from from working in the stock brokerage field all the way to being a radio show DJ, a morning show producer, all in this process of trying to be Sean Puffy Combs. I had to fund that dream that I wanted to accomplish. And it was in there that my boy Pookie was like, well, look, man, you used to do all that finance stuff with the stock market. Why don't you just go back and get your mortgage license, and we can continue to keep our working relationship and our friendship going together. And I did. I took that, I was like, yeah, of course, we're boys, and we worked well together as partners in the record label business. And I was like, yeah, well, why stop what we're doing right now? So that was kind of the transition. And then ultimately he got into other ventures like clubs and restaurants and things like that. And then I just started really creating a career, not by choice, but just kind of how I stumbled into it, in both mortgages, real estate. Like Frank the Tank, got into doing some personal investments and flipping and, buying and holding, and Airbnb now at this point. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it all is at this point evolved.
They talking about Airbnb. That's the big thing right now. I saw that when I first started getting into wholesale real estate. I started seeing things about Airbnb, and I'm like, man, I'm still trying to learn this wholesale real estate thing. But got a homeboy up here, man, and he's doing Airbnb, or he's doing and he's doing short term rentals, and really doing well on it. He said he uses the Bird method. I had never heard of it before. He had brought it up, but yeah, have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah, that's buy. Let me see. It's buy, rehab, refinance, rent,
Mhm.
repeat, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and it's a great model. It's super simple. Essentially, acquire the real estate, put some money into it. Put the lipstick and eyeshadow, as they call it. Throw somebody in it. So now that first mortgage is being paid for, but now it is
Mhm.
appreciated because you have rehabbed it a little bit. Then you go and refinance it, yank out the equity from it, and then you have that renter paying for that mortgage, and then you go take that equity and you go buy and repeat. You go do that all over again.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
no,
that's nice.
it's a really good play. And the Airbnb game is essentially, it's the low level entryway of like getting to play like what the hotel and hospitality game looks like, right? You're just doing it in the format of owning a house versus a hotel, which is, a whole nother level of game in owning real estate. But in this day of us becoming sovereign individuals, the Airbnb game just affords somebody having that little notch in their real estate portfolio. So
So with that though, man, and I'll ask you because that's a good segue. I want to ask, with the Airbnb game, are you buying homes close to market value when you're doing that? That way you can Airbnb it for a maximum amount, or what are you normally doing? Are you still trying to wholesale that?
that's a really good question, man. It's tough right now. This is we've got, as they would say, maybe a very perfect storm. Nothing is ideally right, kind of for anybody. I mean, whether it's an investor or just a general person that's interested in buying their first house, their second house, the next house, that last house, whatever it basically is. In any given market, the idea thing is obviously to be able to buy something for less than what it's worth, so that you're always buying it with a little bit of cream left in there, right? But
Right.
I don't know if that really exists right now. I'm sure, I mean, you playing the wholesale game, you're probably having to flip over a lot of different deals just to be able to capture what might have not been the need, just barely a year ago or 2 years ago, even back. And I just think it's all cyclical. This is just one of those moments that the thing is, I'm not trying to get philosophical here, but as human beings, man, we forget really fast. If you rewind 3 years ago, we wouldn't be doing this type of thing because it was all COVID. And now COVID is so gone, but just think about if you can put yourself back in that moment on how much of a hindrance that was to just our all around existence. And now it's gone because that too shall pass, as they say. And this little blip that we're going on right now with real estate and interest rates and just inflation, I mean, that shit will go away too. And we'll see interest rates really low and great deals will come again. This is one of those things, if I'm learning anything at this point, is to recognize when the next cycle comes and probably not to overdo it like what becomes the habit when those cycles come, because people forget that bad days will also show up. They're like, oh shit, it's raining all over again, man. Like it's never going to end. And it's like, it always ends. I mean, history will show that
it always comes down. If it's up, it goes down.
That's right. That's right. So, I'm just happy that I'm older at some level, I guess, that I'm having this sense of consciousness to be able to be more aware of that now. So when the next time comes, I won't mess it up, and I haven't messed it up, but I certainly realized how there was great opportunity just in the last decade. And most of my adult life has really started taking place over the last decade. Like I said, I've been doing this for 16, 17 years, but I've just now barely been married like 14 years with kids that are kind of 7, 9, and 12. So I've been focused on adult shit for the last decade. Now the next decade, when I get that opportunity, you'll be like, all right, well, I mean, the decade before that, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was chasing skirts, trying to be, like I said,
next Buffy. Yeah, like you said.
So it's like I get another decade maybe to do it right, hopefully.
Yeah, But since you've been in the game for so long, and like you said, things are cyclical, right?
Yep.
So with housing prices being as crazy as they are right now, do you anticipate that we're ready for another housing bust like we did before?
That's a really good question too. Yeah, 2007, 2008. So look, this is what I don't buy into. I don't really buy into much with what all the experts say, because each and every time anything has happened, the experts always show up. And granted, I'm barely community college educated. And these guys are magna cum laude, colada, whatever, pina coladas from Harvards and Yales, and they still get the damn shit wrong. So, and they're the ones that get all of the FaceTime on the news that at least allegedly lead us to believe that something's happening, until we're sideswiped by some 18-wheeler event that nobody ever knew was going to happen, right? Just a month ago, not even, the talks of, depending on whenever you guys air this, the talks of there being maybe some calm or sense of calming down of where the feds were going with the interest rates seemed like, okay, maybe they've reached that level where they were going to stop, they were going to start the tapering. And then that bank goes out of business like overnight. And then it's like, okay, is that going to create a problem? Of course it's going to create a problem, because now we're globally connected humans. I mean, it's like, it's, as they say, the butterfly effect, right? Like a butterfly flaps its wings in Japan, and then there's a typhoon down in Southern Africa. And it's just that it's all interconnected now. And now social media, or really it's just it's the power of the internet, allows things to move much, much quicker than the old telephone game. I mean, it's like, somebody says anything good or bad, and you better be careful, because that'll tweet and can explode, as we know.
Man. That's crazy.
Your show is one show away from organically exploding into something, right? Like just going viral. So here's my belief. I think we certainly have an inflated market, and it's wrongly inflated. It is inflated based off of the simple economics of supply and demand. Rates are super high now, so there's this stalemate. let's say if I want to move, well, I don't want to move to go try to find something to go pay 7 or 8% on a mortgage when I've got a 2.5% or 3% on the current one that I have. Not to mention that my house is not really worth what it really is, because it's worth based off of what everybody was willing to pay over the last 6 months, and then kind of going back maybe a year. And all of that was kind of false inflation too. It's just a bunch of people that were
scared that the interest rate was about to go up. So they
yeah.
hurrying up and buying.
And then the strangest thing was this whole sense of, I don't know. It's like we got all cooped up because of COVID. And then the minute we're all free, we lose our mind in terms of what we want to consume. It's like, well, we want to kind of overcompensate for the consumption that we lost for that period of time that we were all in our caves, essentially. And that really seemed to, I don't know, that was kind of like ripping up the emergency brake and then throwing the car in, 6th gear and, trying to launch out, from 0 to 100, in a period of time that just organically we're discovering it wasn't particularly feasible. And so we kind of have like this mess right now. I don't think houses are going to fall the way that they did. And it's only because, as a lot of the experts have shown, most everybody that has been in their houses, if any of you have tried to qualify for a mortgage over the last several years, it's not like what it used to be. I mean, I used to just be able to say, I could take Frank's application right here and just say, yeah, you got a job.
Oh,
It's
you
a
got
podcast.
a 780? You got a 780
Yeah,
credit score? We're going to do a no-back loan.
It was all verbal, it's like, what do you make, Frank? And whatever he felt like telling me right then and there. Oh, that works for me. And then when the proof was in the pudding, when people can pay for those mortgages and then realize, you had somebody making 50 grand a year in $1 million house. Well, yeah, that wasn't going to add up. So that seems to be less the case now. And houses have a ton of equity, so that if there was going to be any type of bust, I'd say, I think what's maybe more the cycle to look for is, and this would take some time, is that people will start losing their jobs. And then when they lose their jobs, that's when they are forced to sell, because where they have the money is they turn around and they're like, babe, I can't get a job because all the companies are firing people, and I can't go out and get another good 6-figure income job, to pay for this lovely house. But because the market is appreciated so well on our behalf, let's go ahead and sell, because we can walk away with, 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand in some cases for some folks. And then that gives them that level of reprieve to float them until they're able
to
to
the next thing. Well, what are you doing right now to change the narrative? Because their rates are going up, and you being a mortgage broker, I'm pretty sure that slowed business down. How do you combat that?
Man, I was getting ready to ask you guys if there was another seat at the podcast table. It is hard out here for a pimp.
You got some rhyme skills, dog. You can either blow us up and then you go try to leave us, man. Then we gonna be out of business, dude.
He'll use us up, man. He'll be on here flowing, and then he gets signed somewhere and be gone.
We see Eminem made it. He brought in D12. I mean, they all tried. I mean, come on.
You don't even know D12's name no more. Shit, you gotta get the fuck out of here with that.
That's funny.
Bizarre and Proof. You don't know the rest of them cats.
That was all you need to know. Them Royce the 5'9", other cats that could rhyme. You gotta have some skill now. You can't just be
right.
That's true.
That's true.
Well, I mean, in all seriousness, to answer that question, truth be told, man, I'm not particularly worried. We've always lived within our means, and I've made some good decisions along the way when times were good. I have been pivoting my business to move more from service side of it to more of the investment side of it. This game is a very an emotional game. Any of your listeners will know this. There's buying a house, they put up there like right along the lines of like getting married, having kids, or getting a divorce. Like it's a milestone that is incredibly stressful in anybody's existence, right? And it's just because it's one of those things that we're checking off like a bucket list. It's like, I found the person I want to be with. I want to have some kids. Well, you want to put all that story in a nice little box somewhere. That's a crib, so you go buy the house, and then you start having more kids, and you need, bigger houses and all that other stuff. So, but it's stressful, and people don't, surprisingly, people are actually, if the news wasn't talking about interest rates, people would probably be less worried about interest rates
Absolutely.
because it still fits the storyline of what people are seeking. You know, at the end of the day, they want a place where little Timmy and the dog and, you know, all that stuff kind of plays out as that vision in their mind. But when somebody is like, well, damn, interest rates are high and this is what your mortgage payment is going to be, it's like, well, damn, okay. That, you know, if they went around talking about credit cards are bending you over like mafia bosses, you know, with 30%, you know, interest rates, then maybe people would start really reconsidering like, well, damn, maybe I shouldn't use this piece of plastic in my pocket. Because that's what gets most people into situations that prevent them from getting a mortgage. You get a house, I mean, you're kind of paying yourself anyway. So anyway, I've just started pivoting, recognizing, especially over the last couple of years when I started seeing that Wall Street, specifically here in the Houston area, when the getting was good, when the money was cheap, over 25% of houses that were being purchased and overbid for were being purchased by big investment firms out of Wall Street. And that told
so hedge funds.
You got it. You got it. And I took that as a sign like, all right, this is the real game of Monopoly. You need to, you know, even if I just own Baltic Avenue, which is the little bullshit one right around, you know, at the beginning, if that's all I can afford, let me go ahead and afford that as the little man. And I'll put all the houses on it and all the hotels on it. And I may not be the ones that can own Boardwalk and Park Place, but I got my little piece of the pie. And it's going to allow me to be kind of fortifiably independent. Then some of these cats, man, I worry about even my kids will even have a house. And it's just because what will they cost then? You know, like I look at my parents' house and what they bought it for 30, 40 years ago when they immigrated here to the country. And, you know, it's ridiculous what it's worth now. It's still a nice chunk of change, but damn, they bought it like for 60 large. I don't even know if you can buy a Toyota Camry anymore for you know, 60.
Right.
And that's crazy.
And you know what's so crazy? What's so crazy about that too is, man, like where Jay grew up at and my grandma's house, they're about 4 blocks apart. Do you see, and it was an area that was lower, I would say lower middle class. Would you agree, Jay?
Yeah. You talking about the city?
And so you'll see, I just actually drove through there earlier today. You'll see a lot of these houses now getting remade, you know, made up, and you'll see them on the market now for 200,000-300,000 almost. And that in that neighborhood, in our old neighborhood. So it's crazy what they're going for. How do you
think? Not good neighborhoods, Mark. These are not good neighborhoods. So
yeah, and
you can't
they're
say
not the greatest neighborhoods. So what do you think? What do you think is? It seems like it's outpricing the middleman, the little man. And I'd say step your game up, but everybody is not going to step their game up. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. So there's kind of two things if you look at it, right? Again, before we went on, you guys were asking, you know, kind of like how did that immigration line work from my parents being, you know, studying in Europe, and you're like that usually routes to New York. Well, if you go through kind of the lineage of just how America kind of started, we'll say, you know, with people leaving that way of living and then starting with the 13 colonies, if you will, just on the East Coast, large in part why it's all so expensive there now is it was just populated first. You know, they started moving west, and then when they, you know, ran out of land to, you know, continue to travel at the end of California, they settled there and did the same thing. So the coasts became heavily populated very quickly, which then in turn made the value of real estate increasingly more expensive. What's interesting though, if we lived in New York, it's very likely that the three of us would be renting, and home ownership wouldn't be a part of our conversation. It just would be,
it would be renting together, be sharing a damn apartment together. You know what I'm saying?
Like we'd act like that this was really in 3 different places, and we'd really be in the same room, you know, just with different backgrounds, and you know, putting that rent on $5,000 on a 600 square foot efficiency, you know. So
facts.
But the thing is that it's a limited supply, real estate that is, and you're right. I mean, they are pushing out. There's argument whether or not if there's even a middle class at all anymore. You know, it's kind of just, it's really the top part, and then there's the below part. And the below part, I mean, God bless. I mean, I don't even know where that number starts to say that somebody is below, because I know plenty of people that do quite well as what one would deem as like, man, that's good income. And they don't have all of the lavish promises that they thought that income would afford them, you know?
No,
And
it's true. And I was just looking online or something. They were showing like median incomes, right, for certain areas. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm about where that is, but it looks good on paper. The number does.
Right.
But
Right.
when I go start, paying things and divvying up this and doing that, and I'm like, that money looks short now. It ain't going as far as it should. Especially when I go to the grocery store, I gotta pay a grip for some groceries.
Yeah.
So yeah, that dollar ain't what it used to be at all.
Mhm.
No, at all. But let me ask you something about. So we know the market is what it is now, and
Yep.
the rates are crazy. But I'm just kind of curious about when you encounter like first-time home buyers, right? What are some of the things, some of the common mistakes or the common things you see they come in with or are not aware of or don't have, not prepared for this journey of home ownership?
so credit, I think, is the most underrated component of all things related to the next level of financial growth for anybody. Um, I actually teach a class. I volunteer at a school. Actually, today was my day that I do it. Every Tuesday, I go teach at a high school, financial literacy. And the minute I found like just the hookup as an entry, to just offer this, I was chatting with some parents and they were like, would you teach this at our kids' school? And I was like, absolutely. I feel like it should be, kids and elementary should start understanding these things so that they're quite proficient in understanding what the true dynamics of what makes life work once you're done with all of this school nonsense, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
most people don't understand how important credit is, because at bare minimum, you first and foremost, you have to have a certain credit score to just play the game, right? It's like
Right.
21 to drink, right? I mean, or 18 to vote or 16 to drive. Like there's a benchmark, and people should be well aware that that benchmark is quite important to protect at all costs, because that number is going to ultimately set the tone of what payments will look like, which then becomes a game of just financial management of one's income. If I'm making these are just simple, numbers for arbitrary examples. If I'm making 100 grand and I have a 600 credit score, my 100 grand is not going to go very far for me, because my credit cards are going to have higher interest rates. My car is going to have a higher interest rate. So at 100 grand, let's just say I could have, again, this is all theoretical, but, for argument's sake, I could have the Benz at a $500 car payment, but because my credit is shot, I still get that $500 car payment, but now I'm driving the Honda. And that's not to knock anybody with the Honda, but there goes kind of the story of like, well, I'm making six figures. How come my life doesn't look like it? And it's kind of that backdrop behind things. Then I try to go get the crib, and I go get the crib because 100 grand should easily qualify somebody on paper to go and purchase the house. But same thing, I should be able to afford, again, in theory, a $3,000 monthly payment. But because the interest rate's high, that $3,000 monthly payment is now more for a 250 home instead of a 350 home. And I can tell everybody knows this. All of your listeners would know. Go look online on Zillow or wherever you look up real estate. Look at a $250,000 house and a $350,000 house, and you tell me if there's a difference, right? So all of a sudden,
Right.
it really changes. It really, really changes everything one can afford. And here's, I think, again, part of the theory, even almost what should be the dogma and the religion to this, is this country is built on credit. I mean, if you think about what this country is constantly talking about, the national debt.
$1 trillion deficit.
Come on, exactly. So
Mhm.
a country that operates and functions off of credit is going to have a bloodline economic system that also functions the same way. And
Mhm.
they abuse it pretty radically themselves at the top level. And it's no wonder that the citizens do the same. So it's like the same leeching concept, as the sins of the father pass down to the sons, as the Bible says. So it's an unfortunate kind of reciprocal situation as to the way that happens. But that's the biggest misconception, is that people will come and their credit, and it, especially first time home buyers, as you were asking, Jason, it's that they don't know. That's it. It's not like they meant to mess up their credit. They just all of a sudden think it's the next thing, man. Hey, Mark, nice to meet you. Yeah, my realtor told me to call you, and me and my gal, we're about to get married. Oh, congratulations. And then I go and look at their credit, and I just ask, like, tell me what's going on here. And they're like, well, I pay my bills on time all the time, but the credit cards are maxed out. Anybody ever tell you where that threshold should be? No, I thought they gave me a $10,000 line of credit. I could use the whole thing. You can, except at a cost, right? And so it's one of those things that it becomes more difficult to undo sometimes when you kind of travel a little too far down a path that, again, it's not that it can't be repaired. I mean, credit, thank God, is like a muscle. You work it out, it gets big, but you stop working out, it gets weak. And you can also overwork it out and you get hurt. And then you're on the sideline before you ever can go back to the gym to work out, because you got to nurse yourself back to health. And then even when you can, you're not at the same strength. You got to rebuild up to that. And that, unfortunately, just takes this thing that we call time. But the sooner you do those hacks, you don't have to waste that time.
So the credit is going to be essential then in helping someone get that. Let's say they get to that point. From what I understand, there are a lot of programs out here that people don't know about for first-time home buyers too. That where they don't even have to worry about paying closing costs. They may not even have to worry about putting anything down, get 100% financing, and don't have to pay PMI, which is mortgage insurance for people who don't know. If you're buying a home and not paying 80 and not putting 20% down, you have to pay something that's called PMI. Well, that's what banks want you to pay, but there are programs out here to where you don't have to pay that.
Yep. And that's, very astute to throw that out there, Frank. What part of understanding how those programs work, because most of them have a vetting process, and it's just to go and do the required work that's required. I like to tell folks that are interested in these down payment assistance and all of these grant type programs, that's not a question that you come to thinking you're going to buy a house this weekend and then start asking about that. You think you're going to buy a house in maybe 30 days, 60 days at the most, and you get to work on it now so that you show up basically with that coupon, so that you're like, yeah, and I've got this, and now I'm ready to go. And then now will you pre-approve me with also this tool? Not like, oh, let's also kind of figure this out on the go, because a lot of them take some time, to go through. There, some of them offer some level of education that they want the recipient of the money to kind of go through, which, again, it may take a couple weekends, but that it's important to understand that, so that it's not like, okay, I know this is out there, I heard it on the show, and I want that, and then now I also want to go buy a house. It's like, yeah, it works, but just know that you should get that. Just like anything else, you should be fully prepared to know what you want to do before you're putting yourself in the position to try to start making choices and making decisions.
I think it's about, like you said, education, and knowing these things beforehand so you can prepare yourself. But we do know, like we said, we know credit's important. We know we need it. But to play devil's advocate, so what do you think about those that say the Dave Ramsey method, where credit is bad and you should not use credit?
I think the proper exercise of credit is to just allow someone a little more freedom beyond their reach. The problem becomes when credit becomes the only way that people want to reach beyond their limits. And then what ends up happening, it's not real money, it's credit. It's essentially money that doesn't exist that you're saying that you will pay. The challenge becomes that it is very difficult to feel like you can't run out of credit, because that's usually what seems to stimulate this this sense of wanting to purchase things. It's like, well, it's literally, it's out of sight, out of mind type of thing. It's like, you just know you got it, but it's done in credit and you'll pay for it back in due time. I'm not a fan nor a foe of what Ramsey talks about. I think there's good debt and there's bad debt. I think credit card could be bad debt, but it doesn't mean that you can't leverage it to be good debt. I think a mortgage is good debt. Owning real estate with multiple mortgages, also good debt, helps offset taxes. Car loans, look, as it was told to me, if it depreciates in value, you should lease it. If it appreciates in value, you should own it. And there's not a single car that I know that appreciates in value. I mean, and unless you're buying a classic, and who knows, I mean, you could buy a car now and you're saying like, yeah, I know this is going to be a classic in 50 years. Shit, man, we're going to be flying by then. There aren't going to be cars. So, and then if everybody's going green and you can't have,
Can't have gas vehicle.
yeah, all that stuff. It's like that you'll have a classic that will have to sit in a bubble, because otherwise you go to jail for destroying the planet, if you crank it up,
That's true. That's true. I've heard that too, as far as the vehicle, if it's going to depreciate, you should just lease it, because in a few years you turn it back in and get something else.
That's it.
It's, instead of having something that you got to then resell at less than you paid for it initially, and you're upside down in it. So
yep,
it makes more sense to do that with a vehicle. I definitely agree with you on that.
So, man, what other businesses are you into, and how do you market them? I mean, what do you do to market your business to get your name out there?
So when I was doing the mortgage thing, I was really big on playing the whole social media platform. But what I think is not usually expressed is that social media is not an easy nut to crack. And it has become an increasingly more occupied with busyness. Just like a lot of things, you have to be first to market. And when you're first to market, you kind of get a little bit of the leg up. And if you are able to continue to throw gasoline on that particular fire, you can quite honestly blaze the trail for everybody else to follow, of which now in social media, it's kind of like, hey, I did this. Why don't you sign up for my course? And most people don't really have much of a practice of doing anything. And then they still are trying to pivot to sell the snake oil that they don't even really know shit about. So I'm sorry, I should have asked if y'all can swear on your show.
Yes.
Okay.
No, man, we don't cuss at all.
Okay.
We're
all Puritans are here, man. All Puritans.
But in my experience with social media is, I like to use the reference of exercise. You can try to go on these crash diets and you can lose the weight that you're seeking. Hell, man, if you just seeing you drinking water, if you just go on a water diet for a week, you can lose 20 pounds. It's the following week, will that 20 pounds come back? And the answer is absolutely yes. Now, if you just focus on losing a pound a week, which is much more manageable and has more longevity to it, well, you'll get there maybe, at 6 months, but it's habitual, it's habits, and it's the habitual change that kind of creates kind of more of the change. Social media works in that same way. It's a muscle you got to build, but you got to be prepared that once it turns into a monster, you're gonna have to keep feeding that monster.
Got to feed that monster, baby.
It's incredibly expensive, because as the term that is always loosely thrown around, the algorithm is really just a code that is picking up what is working for each and every individual. You guys running this podcast, and who is it for? Is it for, men? Is it for women? Is it for business? Is it for this? And the algorithm is trying to figure out who your audience is. And once it starts getting hits, then it's going to start telling you, hey, feed the machine for this particular vein, because this is what's working. And then what do? You put the money in there, and then all of a sudden you see your little blip. And then maybe out of the blip, I think the thing that is also misunderstood is that this is a game of numbers, just like the rest of the laws of the universe exist with the game of numbers. The conversion rate on anything at best is 5%. At its absolute greatest is maybe 10%. And that's with all of the back end machine stuff that is able to convert people to kind of turn into whatever lead you ultimately want them to be, which is essentially a hot sale. You know this, Frank, with your sales background. But everybody else is a 2 to 3%, meaning 100 people, the three of us included, could go walk into a car dealership, and there's only 2 to 3 people that are going to buy a car that day out of that 100 people, because that's just the law of numbers. And at best, they might get 5 to 10 of us. And that's because the coffee was really good. You know, I'm single and I like the saleswoman and she's super hot and I'm just going to buy the car because that's going to make me look good to her. I mean, there's all of these factors that just kind of would trigger the additional conversions, and social media plays that specifically. Now, in terms of business, I figured I think it's a relationship game better than I've ever kind of considered before, that if I can go deeper with who I connect with, even you two, for example, what other extensions of opportunities might you have that I am completely unaware of, but I might figure out on how to leverage if I spend more time getting a chance to know you, versus if it's like, hey man, thanks for having me on your podcast. And, you know, I like some shit every time you post something.
In other words, network.
But really network, not just for the sake of saying, hey man, I clicked on your thing. Hey, thanks for coming by. No, actually establish relationships with somebody, what he's saying.
But I would still apply the same framework that for every 100 people that I meet, I'm really looking to really get to know 2 to 3 of them, so that at some point I've got a manageable circle of friends that maybe I don't need to be in touch with all the time. I know that you guys are boys, but remove the podcast, you guys probably don't need to communicate a lot to keep that relationship fortified. You know, you can pick up every few months and there's still that tight bond because the depth is there. And then you only need a handful of people, maybe a dozen at the very most. It becomes very energetically impossible to serve that many people at a deep level. I mean, if you got kids, I mean, how many of them can you love? I mean, it's like I got 3 and my wife wanted 5. I was like, damn, a couple of them would have just fallen off. I may not even know who the hell they are. I'd just be paying for them. You know, it's like, what's your name? That kind of thing.
I stopped at 3 myself, player, so I understand.
But I mean, even at 3, it's a lot. And I see where some parents are like, yeah, we'll have 1, because you just pour all into that one child. Right. So networking is imperative. As I can't remember where I heard it or how it was explained to me. It's who you know that gets you in, and then it's what you know that'll keep you there. So looking for any type of opportunity. I mean, this is a blessing to me. I got on here because I know somebody. That's it. I don't know you. I know the other guy, you know, and because of that, I get a nice little opportunity to obviously share my story and then allow that to lend different exposure, you know. And then if there's 100 people,
who taught you your hustle?
Man, that was I would say that's definitely my old man. I mean, my old man didn't come, he didn't get it. He was a farmer, man. He was a 5th generation farmer, and he wasn't supposed to have left the farm, if you will. But my dad was a really big person. His thing was he always told me, even as a little kid, he was like, figure it out. Like, I mean, this was a dad that never gave me anything in terms of like the answer. He gave me plenty, but when I was faced with something, he said, just figure it out. And I was like, well, I don't know. And he goes, you know, something that'll get you started, start with that. And then it's like, all right, you know, and then you just start, you know, you just kind of start peeling back, you know, the layers basically. Right.
That's a good message. That's a good one though. You know, just figure it out. Yeah, I like that. You know, kind of pivot back to Facebook social media, the whole thing. On your page, Mark, I saw you hosted an online show.
Yep.
You still do that or what?
I'm circling back with it now. So I happen to be in a little arc, if you will, in the storyline of my life. And now I'm doing things very, shoestring budget. Because I've spent all the money on it before. I've had the teams, I've had the big offices and all of, you know, the optics that look good from the street, you know, where people are like, man, they're doing good. Mark's doing good. And what a lot of it is it's a big nut that you have to continue to pay for. So you have everything, and to everybody, it looks like you're rich, but you're really broke rich. You know, you're paying for everything to keep up what that essentially that imagery looks like. And I'm not talking about fancy cars and shit like that. I'm talking about, you know, from the commercial component of what having a business looks like, you know, an office place, office teams, you know, the management and payroll and benefits. And it's like, man, there was this great sense of pride that I had. I was like, man, I actually built some shit. And then, you know, you start seeing what the company has to generate just to sustain this mechanism. And it's like, anyway, COVID actually was a blessing in disguise because it created an opportunity for me to pivot. And what's interesting, last year was my very first year of doing it in its most trimmed down version than I've been, you know, almost since the very beginning. And I made more money last year and work less time because I have less bullshit that I have to actually pay for.
Oh shit. What is it about?
Swear to God. What's that?
What is it about?
What do you mean? What is it
Your
about?
online show. Your online show.
Oh, no. Well, so I mean, the platforms that I was doing before was, well, I had Mortgage Money Genius. That was one thing that I was teaching very specifically at a very kind of mid to high level, all about mortgages to real estate agents and investors. And then even I'd say less maybe first time home buyers and more like second and third time home buyers, because that's the way I was targeting those shows. Then I started pivoting because I wasn't really having a lot of fun with it. And I wanted to enjoy what I was doing. I was robotic with putting on, you know, kind of the suit of like, hey, everybody, this, you know, just like with the canned intros and outros of any type of show that exists on social media platforms. Then I did music, mortgages, and life. And that was something that was a little bit more akin to me because I would actually showcase news that I wanted to talk about. You know, if there was a new album coming out and I'd start jamming it on the show. I'd even freestyle on my shows. And, you know, there was a track that I'd found and literally early in the morning, I mean, this was just kind of the old artist or rapper in me. I'd have music playing in the studio in the office. And it just, I hear my mouth start saying shit. And I'm like, man, you know what? I'm going to loop this and this is what I'm going to come out. And I'm going to freestyle some stupid ass shit just for the purpose of that being the segue into talking about interest rates and what the feds are talking about. And here's a down payment assistance program or whatever. And then I would close it out with something that was life related. Hence the kind of the segment being called music, mortgages, and life. And the life punctuation was kind of saying, you know, so my daughter's turning 11 this weekend and she's asking me, you know, to get her a phone. I've got a problem with this because, you know, I know, and, you know, whatever, it was just kind of a connected piece for people to say like, yeah, you know, I'd get a lot of personal DMs, you know, of whatever I usually would say kind of on that tail end. Very little about the mortgage because nobody cares about the mortgage. Like I said, it happens maybe a handful of times in somebody's life. Most people were interested in what I was going to talk about on the music or what was I going to share something about in the life component, meaning something that was happening in my life. So I've just started playing with TikTok and doing this again, but my biggest challenge is really doing all the editing, you know, and man, I got thumbs the size of elbows. So, I mean, even just trying to mess around doing all that stuff on the phone is a bit of a learning curve, but I do have kids and I get to leverage them now and, you know, kind of, you know, I don't know, bribe them with Dairy Queen blizzards and all kinds of shit like that just to get them to.
That sounds like great child labor you got there, Mark. That's and they know all that stuff on those phones, the apps, all that crap. They're great at it. Trust me.
Indeed.
Much better than we are, man. So listen here, Mark. Let's give your business a shout out. Tell us the name of the business and how people can find you.
Oh, I appreciate that. All right. Well, the mortgage company is called Codemark Financial, all spelt as it sounds. We say we're the code to home ownership. Or behind anything and everything that operates efficiently is a code, and we are that code. So we're located down here in the Houston, Texas area. We're currently licensed in Texas and working on Michigan, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, California, and Arizona are our target states for the next 6 months. Just takes a little, there's bureaucracy with those states just as there are with all kinds of government agencies. So
damn government.
Yeah.
Government.
But yeah, and that's it. And you know, we're kind of known for, we've kind of coined the term mortgage lending with no fees. We never charged fees. We never charged broker fees and application fees and a lot of those, you know, origination fees. I think unbeknownst to many, when people work with a broker, we already get paid by the companies that we offer their products. We just never thought it was particularly fair nor necessary to have to double dip to say, well, if they're going to pay me, I'm also going to charge the home buyer. But then again, that's our business model, and it's worked just fine for us.
Right.
You got a website?
I do. It's the company name, codemarkfinancial.com.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good, man. This was a great conversation, Mark. I really appreciate you coming out. I really do, man.
Jason, Frank, I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you, brother.
Helping some listeners, but helping us as well. You know, we're always looking to learn some new stuff too. So, you know, hey, I'm a homeowner, so I need to know everything I need to know.
I hear you.
Right.
Frank, you want to finish us out?
Yeah, brother. Mark, stay on when we finish up here. But one thing, man, what he hit on earlier was teaching about credit. One thing that I try to do with my kids is just teach them the things that I didn't learn. I didn't know anything about credit, and that's probably because my mom and dad, what they learned when they were younger was work hard, get them a job, and go work hard, go to school, work hard, and get them a job, and retire from that job after 30, 40 years. So they didn't learn those things about the credit that they could have taught me, and we definitely didn't learn this shit in the school. School that we went to in the late 80s, early 90s didn't teach us a thing about credit. So one thing that I just try to teach my kids right now is understand the value of that credit, and that's something that you should always teach your kids too, because the credit is key. Credit is king. I know they say cash is king, but credit is really king, because credit is going to give you the cash that you need. So start teaching your kids about credit as early as you possibly can, so they know that, have a grip on that when they are graduating from high school, and if they decide to go to college, or if they decide to take a trade and go on about their lives, they at least know about credit and what they can and can't do. All right.
Wise words, man. Wise words. So with that, I want to thank our guest, Mark Macinerney, for coming out. And remember, it's Codemark Financial. That's his business. We'll also have that in the show notes for the links to his site. And with that, we got Big Frank. I'm Lil J.
Lil J.
Y'all know what it is. Can't move on, y'all. We're out.
It was just
D-Town, LA, NO, Florida, Mississippi, KC, MO, Show 'em what you stand for. Show 'em what you stand for. Show 'em what you stand for. Chi-Town, Tennessee, Carolinas, Alabama, Oakland, St. Louis, Detroit, Atlanta.